Hello folks, and welcome back to part 3 of the Q&A. And I intended this to be just one video, but I had to break it into 3 because you guys sent in so many questions and I wanted to try to answer as many as I could here. So this is part 3 of the Q&A. So check out part 1 and part 2 as well. And hit that like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel so you won't miss out on future uploads. And now it's time for me to answer some of your questions, so let's get right into it. Sergio asks, do you prefer buying CDs or using a streaming app? Well, vinyl is always the coolest, I think. Cassettes I never really cared for. CDs are alright, but I would say like 95% of my listening is straight from YouTube these days. And then we have like 5% is Spotify. And I have some vinyls here, but my vinyl player is packed away somewhere. And the same with the CD player and most of my CDs. Plus I'm kinda lazy and comfortable, so streaming it is for me personally. But I do enjoy laying my hands on some vinyl from time to time. But I don't collect stuff like I used to. Blinded Inside asks, can you please do a top 10 list of the best thrash metal albums from 2008 and forward? Well, I did top lists from 1983 up until 1994, and after that thrash metal sucked in most cases, up until 2001 or so, when the 3 German bands put out some new records. My plan is actually to do a few more top 10 thrash videos here in the upcoming weeks, just to try to find those gold nuggets in the ocean of shitty mid-90s records. And I'm not sure that the series will ever reach 2008 and forward, but maybe it will if we keep it up. But the plan is to start up the series again and to do a few more, even if the mid-90s was the worst period in thrash metal history, at least according to myself. Hitius asks, can you recruit an army of metal beep and bring back the glory days for us metalheads? Come on, man. What do you think I've been trying to do for the last 365 days or so? Spurtat asks, do you have a band or do you play any instruments? As I mentioned earlier, I used to play the guitar, and yeah, I had a band sometime around 2003 to 2005 or something. We were true new wave of traditional heavy metal pioneers, and we called ourselves Achilles Heel and later on Karen's Blade. And I think that we had the right ideas, but not the know-how. In short, we sucked. Yehey asks, what's something that you want to change about the current state of metal music? Well, almost everything. But the worst thing is probably the production. So many bands screw that up. I mean, when was the last time that you heard a decent recorded thrash metal album by one of the old dinosaurs? So if I ruled the world, I would definitely ban the standard clicking drum sound or the compressed studio production and bring back the dynamic and organic thrash sound of the 80s. Crispy Christ asks a long ass question. I like how you are ruthless in your reviews. You're not an asshole or rude about it. But if an album sucks, you have no qualms telling us how you feel about it and why. Is that why you call it Ruthless Metal? Was that the original idea, to be ruthless in your honest assessment? Well, I do try to speak my mind, even if I might get a few angry messages after dissing AC/DC and Kiss, like in this video. But I think it's better than the alternative, to not say anything at all. But that's not why the channel is called Ruthless Metal. It has actually nothing to do with me being edgy or anything. It's simply because my last name is Ruth, so that's where the Ruthless name comes from. It's just a nickname, and I thought it would fit. And I didn't want to use the Ruth Sin name, which I considered for a while, which in its original idea was a homage to Ruthless Sin, the San Francisco club where the Bay Area thrash was birthed. And I didn't want this to be just a thrash metal channel. I really wanted to bring in all types of metal. So that's why I chose the name Ruthless Metal. Plus it's easier to understand what the channel is about if it has metal in its name. Swanton Atom Bomb asks, other than your home country, what country do you think produces the best bands? Good question. I do think that Sweden had an amazing heavy metal scene, especially during the first half of the 80s. But besides Sweden, I gotta say England. They had so many great bands with the whole new wave of British heavy metal scene, but also old giants like Priest and Black Sabbath. And we can't forget about the rather underrated thrash scene that they had in the late 80s. Plus they also had a handful of cool doom metal bands as well. United States was also a great metal nation, but for a different reason. The whole US power metal scene was great. And they also had a ton of great thrash bands with the scenes in San Francisco, New York and LA in particular, but also in other places like Boston and Chicago and such. France also had a great heavy metal scene in the 80s, but there wasn't much thrash going on there. And Italy had a lot of great bands, the kind of cult doom metal thing that was going on there in the 80s. And we can't forget about Germany, of course. Half of the world's greatest thrash and speed metal bands are from Germany. But yeah, England, United States and Germany are the top 3 metal nations besides Sweden for me. Carl Mikhail Tibul asks, what is your thoughts on nu metal, glam metal and metalcore? I despise nu metal from the first second I heard it. I've always disliked it. Even if many of my classmates and people around me got into it, I never understood it. And I think that most people have come around and realized that Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit sucked. I briefly mentioned glam metal earlier, and I think it's important to separate glam metal from the pop metal stuff from the 80s. Glam metal is for me bands like Motley Crue and LA Guns and stuff like that. And pop metal is bands like Europe and Def Leppard and super cheesy pop stuff like that. And I think that fast heavy metal sounding glam songs are alright, but pop songs dressed up in metal fashion is not so much. And metalcore is something that I never really cared for. It's nothing that I've come in contact with that much over the years. But when you're into metal, you always see these Justin Bieber lookalikes with tattoos that screams into the mic and they really think that they are the coolest things since sliced bread. But anyone with functioning ears can clearly hear that that is not the case. Felipe Germanos asks, when you were first starting, what did you expect for the channel? Did you expect to grow so much so fast? Do you feel that there is a lack of metal content on YouTube and the internet, and hence suppressed demand? I didn't have any plans really, I just wanted to do one video because I was bored. And I hadn't seen any videos on one of the greatest metal scenes of all time, the first wave of Swedish heavy metal. And yeah, the channel grew beyond my expectation. It even outgrew my gaming channel that I worked tirelessly with for the last 2 years in just a few weeks. And I never felt like there was a lack of content in general surrounding heavy metal on YouTube. I think that there are several great content creators that covers metal. Whether it's Lair of the Alchemist, Sea of Tranquility, Quest for Metal, Bryce Talks Metal or Banger TV to mention a few. And several channels that uploads metal music as well, whether it's labels or just dedicated fans. But on the other hand, some of those have a bigger focus on either it's hard rock or black metal in some cases, while my channel is mostly about the 80s metal. And perhaps mostly about thrash and heavy metal too, but I like to throw in some other stuff there as well, like speed, power, doom, death, progressive or black metal. And since I don't use a face camera and rant about metal in that way, I had to get a bit more creative, so I try to animate the videos a bit and use text and images and stuff like that. So I think that my channel sticks out a bit in that way. Felipe also asked, what are some of the best concerts you've been to? In 1999 I saw Motorhead, Dio and Manowar in a small venue in Sweden. So that's one of my favorite memories, being able to see Dio and Lemmy and the rest of the guys in Motorhead before they passed away is of course something that I cherish. Other great memories are seeing Candlemass with Messiah Marcolin. I also saw Testament on the Gathering tour. I saw Anthrax when they reunited with Joey Belladonna, that was huge, and they delivered a great show as well. And speaking of great shows, Seeing Celtic Frost was absolutely insane. Well, I can name drop a few cool bands that I've seen: Judas Priest, Overkill, Saxon, Accept, Megadeth, Exodus, Metal Church, Niflheim, Deep Purple, Hyrax, etc. etc. I also saw Europe on their reunion gig, their first in like 15 years or something. I also saw The Haunted 2 or 3 times in the late 90s with members from At the Gates. And I've seen Entombed AD, rest in peace LG Petrov. I saw Crater Destruction and Sodom in Stockholm in 2002, and it was like 400 people there. So those are some of my best concert memories. Felipe continues, what percentage of your time listening to music is spent listening to classic albums versus discovering new stuff? And what percentage is spent on non-metal genres, and how do you go about discovering new music? I don't seek out that much music outside the metal genre these days. And I would say around 90 to 95% is just me listening to 80s metal. But I do discover new bands sometimes, and it's mostly by word of mouth. Or sometimes I discover bands either through Spotify, the Metal Archives, or simple YouTube recommendations. And listening to music has changed a bit since I started doing YouTube. If I'm doing a video about some band, I try to listen to them as much as possible while creating the video. Jake Blanton asks, if you made a crazy good metal supergroup, who would the members be? Okay, on top of my mind I would go with Jeff Tate on vocals, Tony Iommi guitar, Andy LaRocque on the other guitar, Cliff Burton on bass, Sorry Geezer, and Dave Lombardo on drums. How about that for a lineup? You want one more? Okay, I give you one more. Equally good supergroup. Rob Halford on vocals, Michael Denner and Hank Sherman on guitars, in with Geezer Butler on bass and Les Binks on the drums. A King Diamond meets Judas Priest with Geezer Butler or Black Sabbath on bass. That would have been something. Well, let's do one more supergroup, a thrash metal supergroup. A young Tom Araya on vocals, Dave Lombardo on the drums again, Dave Mustaine and Tommy T. Barron of Coroner on guitar, and Cliff Burton on the bass. Light Yagami asks, what is your favorite metal genre? Thrash is probably my number one, or regular early 80s heavy metal. Those two are my favorites, but doom metal, speed metal, that US power metal sound, the epic metal stuff, and some early progressive metal I really do like. Yeah, those are my favorites, but thrash and heavy metal are my top two. Mr. Yagami asks, you're Swedish, so what's your opinion on Sabaton? I think they are a bit overrated. I saw that Accept was the opening act for them here in Sweden. What the peep. Accept are metal legends. Sabaton are just another power metal band in my book. That just felt wrong in every bone in my body, but I can respect them for grinding and doing their thing for years. And that they write lyrics about war and big battles and stuff like that, but I don't know, I just don't find them that compelling. And TXP3 asks, what is your opinion on the modern thrash scene? And what are your thoughts on old bands continuing to release new music, despite a lot of the times having a lack of quality and passion? I don't think it's a lack of passion, I think it has more to do with the changes in how things are recorded. Plus people get older, they listen to other things, and their performances can deteriorate, especially amongst the vocalists. But I agree, it's rare for an 80s thrash band to put out something in this modern day that can compare with albums that they put out in the 80s. But on the other hand, would I rather see them disband and be inactive and become forgotten? No. I would rather see some 60-year-old thrashers be on stage playing some classic thrash songs than not being able to see them at all. So for me the question is easy. I rather see them even if they in some cases can't fully live up to the expectations. So go out there and see the bands now while they are still active. Because in 20 years or so, many of our old favorite bands will be gone. Corpse Paint wonders, are there any metal bands that you used to like when you were younger but now think are totally lame. Well, if we skip the bands that I listened to when I was like 12, I can't say that I listened to any bands that I would be ashamed of now. I've been a thrasher since the 90s, so sure there are some albums that came out around that time that were rather lame. Like some of those Flotsam and Jetsam albums, or a few of those shitty radio records that Megadeth put out, or a few of those semi-groove albums like Overkill's Necroshine and Killing Kind and stuff like that. And yeah, I bought Pantera's Cowboys from Hell and the two albums that followed, Vulgar Display of Power and Far Beyond Driven, and I can find those albums highly mediocre today. But on the other hand, I don't know if I've even heard those albums before buying them, so I guess I've changed my opinion on some records, but I don't think that Flotsam and Jetsam or Megadeth are lame, even if they put out some shitty records in the 90s. And that's all the questions for today, but if you found this video interesting, or if you just want to help the channel grow, then smash that like button, subscribe and leave a comment down below. I'm also on Patreon if you prefer to support the channel that way. And if you become a patron, you get an invite to the Ruthless Metal Discord server, and you get to have your name in my videos, like the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So thank you guys for your continued support, and of course for watching this video. And that's all for now, so I hope I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.